Gary, let's take a moment and say thank you to our sponsors at Fuji Sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've been working with us for a very long time, not only on this podcast, but also at the Academy. And I'm taking a peek at their website right now, and they have a brand new ultra light gi. Now, this is mind-blowing. I'm looking at my size. A2 is 2.75 pounds. I mean, that's under 3 pounds. That's mind-blowing.
I could even lift that. And go to their website, fujisports.com. Check it out. Anything you could need for your jiu-jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Hey, it's been a while since we started RŌL TV project.
It's been a while since you started it. I did come in later, and I can't say enough about it, especially the new platform. It's really amazing, fully customizable, and you know a little bit more about the structure.
Well, so two things you need to know. One is the subscription service, which is $9 a month. You can get access to hundreds of videos, hundreds of drills, techniques, and so on in a very nice library categorized as you need them. But two, different lessons. You can actually purchase those individually, and you own them, so the subscription is not tied to it at all. You can look at things like spider guard, half guard sweeps, half guard chokes, folding pass, and so on. There's so many of them out there. So take a look and see where you need help with the videos, right? 30% if you type in RŌL Radio as a code.
Who doesn't like saving money? Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. On this episode, Kieran Kichuk discusses his appreciation for fellow Canadian George St. Pierre, what it takes to be excellent on and off the mats, why people burn out, and the importance of routine. Here's the RŌL Radio with Fernando Zulick Black Belt, Lloyd Irvin student, and a man ranked number 3 in the world at 155 pounds, Kieran Kichuk.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live.
Here we go.
Gary,
Yes.
you have great news for us.
I do?
Yeah, yes, you do.
I was really hoping you were going to forget about this.
Come on, man. The great news is, what is going to be your new Instagram name?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It might be something totally unrelated to jiu-jitsu. I don't know. But
There has been a lot of questions.
yes, I know.
What?
So if you
what
don't
is your
know,
current?
and please
name?
don't attack me on Instagram. But it's Gary Blue Belt 71 because I'm old as. Yeah. So
And that's no longer a valid name.
Well, it's not accurate because last week I got my purple belt.
Oh, there you go.
Hooray
There you
for me!
go.
Hooray!
So the important thing is, I'm wondering,
Yeah.
how much wisdom has you inquired over the last few days as that purple belt been sinking in?
As I told Ray Corona when I got it, I am now halfway through my medical degree. I'm halfway through my philosophy degree. But I said to somebody on the mat, I guess now I can stop saying don't take advice from me because now I got my purple belt.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I told a white belt that was at open mat that day, now you can take my advice. I still don't know if it's worth anything, but I can now say take it. But it's been a while coming, and I'm not on the mat. I started late. I'm not on the mat a ton, but it was a great feeling, and I've been
Element of surprise, huh?
Little element of surprise. I've been at every open mat since, and getting, some things went well, some things didn't. So, but I just feel like it's a different experience. This one from the blue, which was quite a while ago.
How?
I feel like this one is. There's more pressure to do well, but it's a welcome pressure, if that makes sense. I'm enjoying it and I'm welcoming it, and it's giving me some motivation. Where with the blue, I was like, total imposter syndrome. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. I don't want it even. I'm not ready. But I think that has to do a lot with, like I said, coming into it later in life, and, the demographic of the guys that I go with are much younger and former athletes. But it's fun, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. That's all.
All right. Well, good for you. Congratulations. If you're listening to this, I want you to spam Gary with all kinds of questions, all kinds of. He has all the wisdom right now. But now, on a serious note, congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's not make this about you, okay?
No, we shouldn't, because nobody will listen. So let's go.
We have a guest that I'm refusing to pronounce the name. So, okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. Let's bring you right in. But what was interesting, before we even started this conversation, you pronounced my name, and it was almost flawless. And so first of all, welcome. And what is your name?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kieran Kichuk.
Oh, I would have.
That's one pronunciation.
Yes. Okay.
What's the other?
So here's the thing: is like, you'll even catch me in interviews calling myself different things in the same day. Sometimes I remember I did finishers sub only to qualify for Emerald City, and then I did one interview after the semis, one after the finals, and back to back I called myself Kichuk and Kichuk. In back to back interviews.
See, I knew a Kichuk. I knew a Kichuk, so that's what I was.
I thought
yes,
it would be Kichuk. It's interesting. It's interesting. So hold on. Do you do this intentionally or unintentionally? Different pronunciations.
So basically, like. I'm a second generation Canadian. My family comes from Ukraine and Ireland. My last name is Ukrainian, but everybody in my family seems to pronounce it differently. And I went to my grandfather, who's like he's the oldest person I know in my family, and he's a bit of a strange guy. But that's a topic for another time. And I asked him. I said, "Hey, how do we pronounce our name?" And he's like, "However you want." And then and I said, I was like, "Well, what's the correct pronunciation?" He's like, "I don't know." So he says one thing, my dad says another, distant family says one thing. So I kind of alternate between Kichuk and Kichuk.
Well, there you go.
Nice.
Gary's thinking about this right now, pondering.
Yeah. Well, mine's easy. So, but yeah, I thought I had it, but I guess I did. I mean, I had one of them,
close,
right?
Yeah,
I had one of them.
It was close. Yeah.
If I know you're referring to me, it's mission accomplished.
There you go.
There you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel the same way because, like, the mail that comes to the house, and my last name is freaking ridiculous, but I blame my father for it. And that's like what you see, like on social media, or whatever. There's actually not the actual name. There's dots and dashes over my Z's and N's. So like, there's these fluctuation of voice that the original name. So I blame my father for it. But go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quickly, my next door neighbor, my name is Gary. Mm-hmm. My next door neighbor was calling me Derek for months. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like you said, mission accomplished. I knew he was talking to me. We were the only two standing on opposite ends of the fence. And I just let it.
You got to draw the line somewhere.
Well,
you can't be letting people call you Derek.
Why not?
All right, it's up to you.
All right, so we have a new co-host,
but then
Derek.
But then he said to one day he said to Margaret, my wife, he's like, "Hey, is this his name Gary?" And she said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I've been calling him Derek. Why didn't he correct me?" And she was like, I don't know. You got to take it up with him," and walked away. But I don't. Whatever. People have been calling me Larry, Derek. Different stuff my whole life, so I don't care anymore.
Yeah, no, I start saying, some of the mail that comes into the house, with the way how my last name is spelled, it's just some of it doesn't even make sense. Like, when you flip two letters, it's like that's one thing, but like some of it's completely off the wall.
I'll tell you another one later off the air. We don't need to keep going with this, but I've got some other good ones.
So I think as I was kind of getting ready for this conversation with you, one of the things that I found was that George St. Pierre was a huge inspiration to you. Is that true?
He was, and he still is. I absolutely adore that man as an athlete. And from what I know, obviously I don't know him personally, but from as a person, I think he's fantastic. He's just a great guy. I've only ever had the opportunity to meet him once in 2015. I went over to TriStar to learn leg locks. I spent a couple of weeks there, and I literally saw him once on my last day as I was leaving the change room. He walked in, and I shook his hand, and that's the only time I've ever met him. But From everything I know about him, he's everything I want to be. He is not only one of the greatest combat athletes of all time. I'm not a big sports guy, so I hope I don't make anyone mad when I say this, but I think that George is one of the greatest athletes of all time across every sport.
So at which point this this goal or vision of looking up to George St. Pierre started? Where's the sourcing? Like, I mean, listen, George St. Pierre, arguably the best fighter of all times. You know, many call him a GOAT. I mean, the dude has accomplished, I mean, ridiculous amount of success with the persona and the presentation that he's done over the decades. You know, so like it's not difficult to see him as an idol, but I think in your case it's deeper than this.
Well, the reason I look up to him so much is that, like, I initially wanted to be a fighter, right? I don't refer to jiu-jitsu matches as fights. I don't talk crap to people who do. You can call it whatever you want. I don't participate in the argument. Personally, I do not think of jiu-jitsu as fighting. But initially, I wanted to fight. And I was watching George St. Pierre, 2008, 2009, when the UFC was first getting big. UFC 100 when he fought Thiago Alves. Mm-hmm. I was watching and I was like, I want to be him. I want to be a fighter. I was already doing a little jiu-jitsu. I started in 2009, but I loved George. I loved that he incorporated grappling, even though towards the end of his career, he wasn't really submitting people, but he was still fucking them up. Oh, can I swear on here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gary does all the time. Piss Gary off and you'll hear it.
Yeah, he's messing people up. And I wanted to fight. And I asked my dad, I was 13 at the time. I said, hey, I actually wanted to start with boxing because I wanted to fight. Mm-hmm. And he did not want me getting head trauma. So he's like, listen, I wrestled when I was young. Why don't you try out wrestling, see if you like it? And I tried jiu-jitsu and I was hooked from my first class. So, and then just competitively, even though he was in a different sport, I was just always looking up to George. He's a fellow Canadian. He's well known around the world. Canada can be pretty quaint in terms of athletics. There's not a whole lot of Canadian athletes out there that are internationally renowned, but he did it. He was one of the first people I saw to do it. And that's why he's my idol.
So what is about him that makes him so great to look up to? Is it the fact that he is Canadian as you are? Is it the fact that he is, very athletic and his work ethic? Or is it perhaps that he is just the best of the best? I mean, there could be many reasons. What's the one thing?
Yes. Well, he just happened. He was the best of the best, and he just happened to be Canadian. And I don't know how much you guys know about Canada, but we actually have it's predominantly English speaking, and we have a French speaking territory, a province called Quebec, and then amongst other small pockets throughout Ontario and wherever. But culturally, we're actually quite different. It's almost like two different countries, right? So I'm not a Quebecois. I'm a Anglophone. So there's that, like, he was Canadian, but I still don't almost identify as the same kind of ethnicity as George.
Okay.
Even though we're both Canadian, right? He's from like almost in a different world. But it was definitely his work ethic and the fact that he's a martial artist, right? He's not just a fighter. He's a lifetime martial artist. Even right now, he's addicted to martial arts. Yeah. Right? He's still practicing. And it's the same with me. Like, I love martial arts. I love jiu-jitsu. Even if I wasn't competing, I'd still be drilling 2 hours every day. I'd still be working hard to stay fit for martial arts. And a lot of that, I think, comes from me, at least watching the persona of George St. Pierre.
Yeah, I wonder if George is really what he is. Now, I know this is kind of a ridiculous question here or thought, but, how much, like, you look at, and I follow him on Instagram. First of all, let me frame this in. I'm a huge fan of George St. Pierre. Like, I do think that he's one of the best, if not the best fighter of all times up to this point, right? One, from what he's accomplished in the ring, but also in the octagon, but also off the mat as a person. As a, his training ethic, the martial arts, like you listen to him and you can clearly tell that there is more beyond this than a job. This is a lifestyle. This is how he presents himself, right? But I often wonder, is it, is he really like this? What do you think? like day-to-day operationally?
So I've had so many opportunities to meet so many athletes. And let me tell you, one of the most common things I like, everyone who takes it slightly serious, right? Who gives, say, let's say 50%, right? They're showing up to practice every day. They're taking those steps towards being a competitor. I hear all the time, I'm going to be a world champion. I want to be a world champion. Yeah. It's my goal, right? And these people they become obsessed with the archetype, right? The image of that rather than the lifestyle that yields that archetype. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you for sure. Like I said, I don't know George personally, but from what I can tell, he's very different. He is living this lifestyle, and that's why he has this persona, right? His lifestyle builds up this persona. And I feel like it's a good representation of who he is. Again, I don't know him. I don't know if this is the case, but to me, in my heart, I feel he's a true martial artist. He's doing it every day. He's staying fit. He's 6 years retired, 7 years retired. He's more ripped than I am, and I'm in my prime. Like he's still working out. He's still training martial arts. He's obsessed. So it seems like.
Yeah, and I always thought he always wanted to be better. Even when he got, like every loss, when he would come back, he was better. It wasn't like he came back from a loss and it was could have went either way. It was like, no, he came back and he dominated, Yeah. And it always seemed like that. And in post-fight interviews and things, it was always like, okay, I learned from this and now I have to make myself better because of it. And then he, in fact, went out and did it, every time. Yeah. So,
and that's something that's actually like close to my heart too. I'm the same way, right? Like when I lose, especially if I lose badly, I try to keep calm, but maybe I throw a little hissy fit and then I take a couple deep breaths and I calm down and I'm in the gym the next day. Mm-hmm. Figuring it out. And a lot of that came from him, I think.
And what you're referring to is, or this whole conversation kind of pivots around the fact of not focusing on the end result, but more focusing on the process, focusing on what we do, how we do it, focusing on the grind, the work ethic, focusing on just simply showing up. Freaking how many people don't show up, right? It's like, it's not about the cherry on top of the sundae, but it's about how to create the ice cream. I just came up with that. That was cool. That was cool. I just came up with
that. Yeah. And if anyone's listening out there as like a, up and comer, someone who's in the lower ranks, I want you to make sure you understand that archetype is a product of a lifestyle. It's a product of what you do day to day. Don't get caught up in the image that other people have of you. Right? The whole fake it till you make it thing, it has some value, but just remember, you need to literally fit that archetype day to day. If that's who you want to be, if there's something you want to be, you can pretend to be it all you want. If you're not doing the day to day things that make you that thing, you'll never be there.
But let's be honest for a moment. That's hard. I mean, what you are describing for somebody, so let's just hypothetically create a scenario. Somebody wants to start training jiu-jitsu. They've seen it. They, it's a popular sport these days. They want to get in there and they're going to start doing this. What you are talking about is literally a life-changing set of events. We are flipping of what we used to do and have, and we're putting that aside, and you're literally talking about changing your life from that point on forward.
That's if you want to be excellent, you need to be excellent. You know what I mean? Like if you want to be excellent, as in people love you, people think you're amazing, they have this image of you, you need to be excellent in the way you live your life. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that every athlete out there is perfect. I've got vices. I've got just like any other human being, but I'm on the mats actively for 9 hours a day, right? 6 to 9 hours a day. Every single day, be that teaching privates and running my practices. And that's been consistent for over 10 years. You know what I mean? Like despite my flaws, despite my shortcomings, that is consistent. And I'm about this shit. I'm about it. And I show that day to day. And if you want to be about it, you need to do that as well.
Gary, I just want to make sure that you heard that. 9 hours a day, every day. Did you hear that?
That's my max. That's my max. 6 to 9.
Yeah, I have more vices. I have 2 little kids. I have a woman in my life that I want to keep in my life.
I'm married too, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and consistency, you know, we just talked to Heather Woods not that long ago. She was talking about people that are like, oh, I'm going to be world champion. But then she sees them only training like a hobbyist, you know, and they might have all the talent in the world, and that's great, but that's only going to get you so far. And if you don't put the rest of the time and the effort, you know, and all those extracurriculars that you have to do, whether it's weight training and diet and, you know, everything else that goes along with it. I think you're just kidding yourself. You know, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't do all those other things, you're going to fall short. Or, you know.
Yep.
You mentioned consistency. You mentioned the routine. You know, you showing up day in, day out. You've been doing it for 10 years. You just mentioned
14.
14. Yeah. Okay, 14. How in the world is this possible? So again, like I'm trying to look at conversations like this through the goggles of a new student, through their eyes, right? Like 14 years on the mat, you know, I've been on the mat for a while too. Even Gary, I mean, you know, it's been a few years, but you've been on the mat. Like we know what this is all about. But individuals who don't, and they are just starting, I mean, could be very overwhelming statement. I'm on the mat for 6 to 9 hours every single day. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think every Joe Schmo would be like, F this. No, maybe.
Well, I am trying to be excellent, or I'm in the process of becoming excellent. So I'm trying to be excellent day to day. And what this martial art offers people is very different depending on the context in their life. Not everyone needs or wants to be excellent, and that is fine. That is 100% okay. Don't get it twisted. You don't have to do this, right? Do jujitsu because you love it. And if you're training, I know so many people who got burnt out and quit, right? They were training with me. 9 hours a day is more of like since I've got my brown black belt. Back in the day, even when I was doing 4 hours of training a day, so maybe an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half at night, an extra 30 minutes stretching, weights, whatever. There was people who were doing that with me for almost a decade who are not training at all now. And it's important you don't burn out as well.
So what made you stick around with it versus the other people who didn't?
I'm obsessed. I have been like, since the first class I did my very first class. They put me in a kids class. I was 13 and I was already athletic. I ran track, and they said, it was 2009 in Canada. There was no jiu-jitsu here. Right. So it wasn't like a great kids program. They're like, put this kid in the adult program. And then from that day, I was literally training 7 days a week. I was only doing one class a day, but I was doing 7 days a week. From the point where I took my first class, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I was like, I want to do this only. And I've just been obsessed ever since. I just keep doing it. Everything else in my life is modeled around doing jiu-jitsu. I went to a high performance athletic high school, meaning I got to show up an hour early and leave at noon. So I would get all my classes done before noon so I could train twice a day when I was in high school. I was really blessed to have that opportunity. And then I was living with my parents and they were supporting me and everything. I had a job, but, you know, I was only working probably 3 shifts a week, 4 shifts a week. So my parents are supporting me and they said, look, if you want our support, you got to continue going to school. I chose a college that was within biking distance of my gym. I scheduled all my classes before noon so I could train twice a day. It's just everything in my life has been modeled around doing jiu-jitsu all day. That's all I want to do. I love doing jiu-jitsu. It's so much fun.
You know, Gary, you know what this reminds me of? Travis Stevens.
Yeah, sure.
We had Travis Stevens here a year ago, and he talked about his Olympic experience, and you know, obviously different story, different time, but he literally, the context is the same. He designed his entire life around the training with the pure purpose of the excellence. And the result was pretty clear, right? I mean, it's and then we're talking about Olympic level. I mean, so in everything from school, the schedule. You know, he was talking about walking and running, and the running was actually part of his exercise. He went lifting somewhere and so on. Like everything was literally cohesive in a sense of I'll do anything that's necessary to achieve this goal. You know, and we'll continue grinding it one by one because
and not only did he do what was necessary, as he found, because like you, he didn't have a ton of options where he found ways to
be creative,
lift with the football team, even though he didn't play football, borrow somebody's car so he could drive to tournaments when he didn't have a car and his parents couldn't take him, when he was a teenager, figuring out how to get from the Pacific Northwest into Canada to train as a teenager, doing all that stuff on his own.
Yeah.
So, I always believe that there's a lot of it has to do with your natural ability, but then if you really want it, you have to do these things that probably don't occur to 99% of the population. That's how they got there. Oh, GSP is just, he's been training his whole life. That's why he is who he is. No, he's been training his whole life. And he's been doing everything smart, and he's been doing all these other things to make sure that he's the best, and correcting his mistakes, not resting on his laurels, not complaining that the fights he lost weren't his fault, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And one thing about St. Pierre too is he says this, you may not know this, but for a period of time, it was every weekend he was going from Montreal to New York to train with John Danaher. Every weekend. That's 8 hours in the car on Friday night, and that's 8 hours in the car on Sunday night. And then he would go to work and train at nights at TriStar. Right? It's people make sacrifices to do what they want to do. And I will say, have one disclaimer: don't burn yourself out. Right? Even if I wasn't competing, my lifestyle would be the same. I'd still be teaching 5 hours a day, training 4 hours a day.
So
even if I wasn't competing, make sure you want to do it.
Where does the burnout come from then? Is it because you don't really want to do it?
The burnout, I think, comes from overemphasizing the result over the process, right? If you think, I'm going to be a world champion, I'm going to be an ADCC champion every day, you're pushing yourself. A, if you're not smart, you're breaking your body. And B, your brain is a muscle too, right? Your mind, your willpower, that stuff needs to be trained and maintained, and it can be broken, right? If you're like, to equate it to bench pressing, like if you're just trying to like set the world record and that's all you're thinking about, and you're not being careful or smart and making sure you're enjoying it, like you're going to tear your pec off, right? You're going to hurt yourself. It's the same thing with your brain. When you overemphasize the result you want, you're going to go too hard, too fast. You're going to lose sight of the long game and how to rest properly, how to lift properly. All the things required to achieve that result are going to elude you, and you're either going to break your body or you're going to break your brain. And I've seen both happen.
So do you think, okay, so this is interesting now. So do you think that quote unquote burnout is it more mental or more physical?
100% mental. I know people who can hardly move. They wake up in the morning. They're a little older. They wake up in the morning in pain, right? And they spend hours warming up, and they show up to jiu-jitsu once a day, or 4 times a week. Like their body's burnt out. 100% their body's burnt out, but their mind is not. And overall, they're still training more than someone whose mind burns out.
So why, in that case, if it's all mental, why we are just a bunch of sissies and we give up so easily? I mean, you can see this.
Speak for yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm. The guy who's going to be late to warm-ups from this point. He's got his purple up. Do you see what I'm saying? Is like it's such a very fine balance, right? From one side, we say, listen, you can overcome all these physical obstacles if you're smart about it, and as long as you can achieve these motions, as you can physically you can move, you should be able to do this. And your brain is essentially, your thoughts are stopping you, so your limitations to yourself. Yet, so many students, so many of them. Oh, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna take it easy this week. There was a holiday. I'm gonna skip it. It is so easy. Why?
Well, that's, again, it depends on your life and what your goals are. And I think jiu-jitsu offers different things to different people. It's okay. if you're that person you just described, that doesn't make me better than you. That doesn't make Leandro Lowe better than you. That doesn't, as a person, it makes them, I'm better than jiu-jitsu than that person for sure. Right. But how jiu-jitsu fits into an individual's life is going to be different for each individual, obviously, when they started, what their goals are when they started, whether or not they're smart about it and burn themselves out. That was kind of a two-part question that you asked. To take it back, treat it like a marathon, not a sprint. And I know that's conventional wisdom, and conventional wisdom is hard to take into your heart.
Yeah.
But just realize, like, if you want to be a black belt world champion, or if you want to be an ADCC champion, for the most part, that's a 15-year journey. Right? That's not a 1 or 2 year thing that a lot of people treat it like it is.
I would even rephrase this, even take this notch down. You're talking about, the 1% success here, being at that level. But even if we take this to the point, if you want to train jiu-jitsu for the next 10 years, you really have to evaluate what your process is. You don't have to, like, I've seen this in person so many times in my academy. Guys show up, they train 6-7 days a week. They just, train, they love it, this and that. And then a year and a half passes by and
and they've been
gone.
They've been told multiple times throughout that period. Down. Yeah, slow down. You're going to burn out.
And what's crazy is, like I told you, I've seen a lot of things, right? I've seen so many people. My coach is Lloyd Irvin, right? And I've been there for 5 or 6 years, and I've seen so many people come and go, and it really seems like they have the same goals as you, for 6 months to a year. And then they burn themselves out and leave. I'm so sorry. I forgot where I was going with this.
It happens to
do that all the time.
It happens to us all the time.
All the time.
But let's talk about that burnout a little bit, because I think that's a big factor for a lot of students, especially in the beginning of the journey. When we are shaping the routines, when we're still discovering. And to be quite honest, I do believe that jiu-jitsu is the hardest, the most complex, the first few years, when we are completely clueless about it. We see all this cool stuff, especially on the Instagram. Boom, I just follow 7,000 people and I see all the cool stuff that they're posting every single day, But we don't have the comprehension to really understand what is happening mechanically with all these different things, right? Once we get to that blue, purple, brown, and so on, the jiu-jitsu gets more complicated, but I think we can process it easier. We can understand it. There is a kind of the passion behind it. Let me figure this out. We are intrigued. At the beginning, it's very difficult to do that, if not impossible to do that, right? And this is the point where everybody kind of disappears, right? So how do we change that? Like, how can we provide an environment for a student where, one, they are safe, two, they are intrigued, they keep staying interested, and they keep just training. They keep training.
Well, I think there's a lot from traditional martial arts that we need to move on from, but there's certain aspects of traditional martial arts that we should hold on to, because before you understand the whole context of jiu-jitsu, which, by the way, I did not until I was a black belt, the whole context of jiu-jitsu, there's a few ways. I'm gonna talk about two, because they're the only ones that really come to mind, but there's two ways to look at it. Say you're new to jiu-jitsu, you're 5 months in, 3 months in, whatever it is, you go in, some girl with a purple belt wrapped around her waist or with a purple belt rash guard on comes and she heel hooks you 6 times and takes your back. There's two ways to look at that. This is dumb. I hate this. Girls are beating me up. This is stupid. I'm not coming back here. Yep. Or she is a goddamn wizard. I want to be a wizard. I'm going to keep coming back until I can do that to people bigger than me. So that's two ways to look. I'm sure there's a bunch of other perspectives people have, but for me, martial arts, what we want to keep from the traditional martial arts is kind of like that wonder and that mysticism for the lower level. And then you want to be more cold and calculated when you get to higher level and actually understand what's going on. But if you like romanticize and really are taken aback by these things that smaller athletes are doing to you, that's going to motivate you to keep going forward, as opposed to where if you let your ego get hurt because 140-pound girl beat you up, you're going to quit. You're going to think this is dumb.
Yeah, I think, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Tom Leroy was talking about this, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. Yeah. It's like literally what you're talking about. Like, we can look at this, and we see this all through life all the time. Glass half full, half empty. There are so many, cliche sayings about it, but it all boils down to the very simple fact, right? Whatever you experienced, either we're going to learn from this, or we're gonna just keep whining about it, and ultimately it will lead to us giving up. Like it is what it is, right? Many people think it's not a choice; it's a circumstance that we find ourselves. And I don't know. I have a hard time. I always have a hard time with this. Mm-hmm. Like for me, it's all about choices. Yeah. Like we make the decision how we look at the situation. It sucks to getting beat up by 120-pound purple belt female. It sucks, let's be honest. But yet, she can probably teach us so much that we don't know yet. Mm-hmm. Why nobody looks at it, especially guys. Often our egos are so big.
Well, I also look at it
as... It's the ego, babe. That's it.
It is. But there's also excuses and reasons, right? I can make excuses as to why she did that.
But that's your ego.
Right, that's your ego. Mm-hmm. And then the reasons are, well, she's been doing it longer.
Yep.
She comes more often.
She's just simply better than
right.
you.
Yeah, she at this point, she's simply better than me.
What you described are the lessons.
Right.
Show up often.
Yeah.
Show up more than other people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And just keep showing up. Don't take those breaks. For the people that we were talking a lot about burnout, instead of stopping for a month, cut back a little bit, but keep going. I haven't told this story in a long time, but I was injured and there was a point I was leaving something. I signed my kid up for something and I had two options. One was come to the academy and sit and watch. The other one was to make a literal right or left turn, literally. The left one was to go get dinner and hang out with some friends at a bar. And I was like, just go. Because I knew if I made that left turn, it's going to turn into a week. It's going to turn into 2 weeks. It's going to turn, and then it's going to be over. Where if I go, sit, watch, make notes, hang out with these people, and keep that routine somewhat going, I'll be there longer, So just
that's
cut
a beautiful
back.
Insight.
Thanks. I said something smart today.
So do you think, it's, I think silly questions based on everything we talked about, but do you think the routine is important or it doesn't have to be?
No, routine is one of the most important things on planet Earth, no matter what you're doing. And it's one of those things too, that like in our culture, it gets kind of like demonized. Like when you think of routine, you think of that guy who wakes up, hates his life, puts on a tie, goes to work at an office he doesn't want to do, or he doesn't want to do the work at. And that can be a routine. Like your routine can be horrible for you, right? Depending. And oftentimes it's a bigger topic of conversation, right? Having like self-destructive behaviors in your routine is not good, obviously. But really, again, what yields excellence is that day-to-day. Right? It gets demonized, it gets looked down upon, but the fact that at 9:30 a.m. every morning I'm in the same spot, I'm doing the same stuff, that's kind of like what yields the result you're looking for. Not saying that I have the results I'm looking for yet. Obviously, I'm trying to be ADCC champion, Nogi world champion. But in my mind, that's what's going to yield those results. Your day-to-day stuff, the decisions you make on the daily, those things that seem really small in the short term, but compound over years.
What I think also was important to acknowledge and remember that as humans, we are creatures of habit. We repeat things the same. We are essentially automation machines. We do the same things over and over and over. Every morning you go do your thing. Every evening before bed you go do your thing. So more of a routine you generate or create around your life. You just streamline the process. There's no should I go today or not. You simply go because it is 6 p.m. and at whatever, it's 5:30 p.m. and at 6 you need to be there and you just go. You don't think about it, right? You just execute. And that makes it so much easier. You know, have you ever run into
Very true.
anybody who comes to academy and they hate it? See, he's thinking about it.
Probably. I don't think so.
See, that's my point. But yet, like, people just think, scratch their heads. Should I go today? Should I go to? Is today the day I should go? No, just go, because you're gonna love it. You'll love it. I get angry about this.
You'll be happy. Yeah, delayed gratification. You'll be happy afterwards.
Right. Yep.
Absolutely.
You're always happy with showing up. You're gonna sit when class ends at 8:30, and you're sitting at your couch on your couch at 8:20. You're gonna be like, man, I really should have went. I didn't do anything.
Yep.
I didn't do anything more productive than what would have happened had I been where I was scheduled to be.
Yeah.
Doesn't even have to be jiu-jitsu. It could be anything. But I was scheduled to be here. I took the option not to. And when that time is ending, you're going to be like, I should have went, you know.
Well, too late now.
So, yeah.
Too late now.
Yep.
What does Marcio Cruz said 2 years ago at this point? Now-
Thursday night football, beer, pizza, and the couch
Yeah.
are the biggest threat to jiu-jitsu.
There
It's
you go.
true. And I really like what you said about just being somewhere because that's where you're supposed to be. And that's very true too, because
Yeah.
if you rely on motivation, you're going to fail every time. We're not motivated creatures. We want to take
No.
the easy way.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a nice
And
little
when you
spark.
are motivated, yeah, exactly. When you are motivated, that's 15 days. That's 20 days at the most.
Right.
At the end of that 20 days, you've been training hard. If you don't have a schedule and a routine, you're gonna be like, fuck, I've been training hard. I've deserved this. I deserve to take this time off.
Yeah. I don't
Or
remember
do
who,
nothing or
I don't remember who said this, but they said motivation could get you started, but the dedication and routine will finish the process. And I'm butchering the quote, obviously, here, but the sense is pretty much the same thing. You know, when you're in the middle of all this, you don't want to be motivated. You want to have a discipline. You want to have this routine. You just do it. You don't even think about it. No matter how hard it is, you keep grinding it. So with that being said, you mentioned routine many times. You said 9 a.m. I am at this particular space. There is no excuses for any of this. What does your routine look like? Let me in a little bit of the stuff that's going on in your head.
so. Me and my wife share a car, so she works full time. So depending on her shift, I'll if she's working at 7 a.m., I'll wake up at 6, drive her to work, and then I head to my first private lesson at 8:30 a.m. If I filled the slot. If I didn't fill the slot, I'm responding to emails. I'm doing video editing. I'm planning for my social media, whatever. It's a work period. At 9:30, I run a practice. 9:30 to 11:15. Hour 45 minutes, down and dirty, right? Drills, situational sparring. After that, I usually have 2 or 3 slots for private lessons. So I go get changed, clean the mats. 15 minutes later, I got a private lesson. And I'll either stack 2 or 3 in the afternoon, depending on how many I can book. Obviously, there's dry spells and whatnot, but an ideal day has those three slots booked. I go home, I eat lunch, I take a nap, I do another hour or 2, depending on how much time I have, of brain work. So on my computer, editing, all that kind of stuff. And then by the time 5:30 rolls around, every single or 6 days a week, I do 2 hours of drills at 5:30 to 7:30. As well, usually in that one of those work periods, I'll study tape. So I'll be deliberately working on one aspect for a couple months at a time in my 2-hour drill sessions. And then I teach a class at night, a no-gi class. So I teach for probably 45 minutes and then I get in for an hour of rounds. And sometimes I schedule one extra private after that, but often I just go home, eat food with my wife, and then go to sleep. And that's my week. And I get Saturday nights, I don't do anything. That's my time to go on a date with my wife.
There you go. There you go. In case you wonder what success looks like, right there.
Every
Well
day,
said.
6 days, right? Or are you, Sundays you're still at it?
Actually, Sundays I take off. I'll sometimes teach up to 3 private lessons on Sunday, but I don't do any training on Sunday. I just go to the sauna and hang out with my wife if she's not busy.
Nice.
If she can squeeze you in.
Yeah, exactly. If she can fit me in her schedule.
What it appears to me that at the very beginning of this whole journey was very pivotal for you. You want to do some striking. You didn't like it. You were interested in mixed martial arts. Obviously, we talked about John St. Pierre having huge impact on your life. And then this first jiu-jitsu class comes along. Do you have a full recollection of what exactly took place that day?
I remember my first roll that I did. So they taught me in drills, they taught me how to do a side escape, how to escape being pinned, like a hip escape, how to regard the basics about framing. And then they taught me a hip bump, a high posture sweep from close guard. So they taught me how to go from being pinned, build up my frames, get a guard, and advance position.
Okay.
They taught me that. And then I remember my first sparring round ever. I grabbed the kid. He put me in a half guard and I pinned him. And then I picked him up on my knees and I slammed him down on his back. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't slam people. But that's about as much as I remember from my first lesson. Yeah.
So you got the trophy for the best training partner of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Slamming kids on their heads.
And this is when you're 13, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So at which point do you move on to the adult classes?
Immediately after that class.
Oh, well.
After he wrecked that other 13-year-old.
The instructor's like,
we're not putting up
with the adult class.
Uh-huh.
So how does the adult class goes now?
Obviously, actually, I was really, really blessed to have an amazing instructor in Canada in a time where there was almost none. So I don't know if you guys do a lot of like studying of instructionals, but a lot of the systems John Danaher teaches and a lot of the methods in which he teaches, like, it's not new. That's old school. Mm-hmm. That's old school jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the stuff on these instructional tapes, like, I already learned the same details, the same cues from my instructor. I don't work with that instructor anymore, but I'm really blessed to have worked with him for the first 8 years of jiu-jitsu.
Isn't it amazing how I think oftentimes we think that somebody has developed something new, but yet it's been around for like 5 decades.
Yeah.
I don't know who said this to us, but somebody referred to jiu-jitsu as this like ongoing wave, ongoing rotation, you know, as there was this one hot thing that everybody wants to study today, but they forget about something else. And then 10 years from now, the thing they forgot about kind of surfaces because somebody else redeveloped it, repackaged it, and now they are presenting it again. And then this becomes the hot thing. And it's like this never-ending evolution of not necessarily developing new things, but repackaging it. Do you see it a similar way?
I'm so glad you said something because emphasis is so important. There's things that I do that are technically correct, but I need an instructor to tell me it's technically correct or I won't commit to it. Mm-hmm. If you know what I mean. I'm like, why? I'm not sure if this is the right thing to do. It feels like the right thing to do. So, but like that imbalance prevents you from executing. And then when you see an instructor you respect, be like, this is what you do. You're like, oh yeah. Okay. And then all of a sudden you start just banging it out because you're deliberately attacking it because it's being reinforced in your mind that that's the correct thing. It takes away that self-doubt.
Yeah. Like we need that reassurance of, you know, it's not exactly. That this is the new area. And if they do it, they must be correct. Yeah. And I think the beautiful part about jiu-jitsu is that it's so fluid and there's such a large diversity of interpretations between jiu-jitsu that I think if we didn't doubt ourselves, we could have much higher success.
I was just going to, you did just say self-doubt. At your level still, does it creep in?
Oh my God, yes. Every single match. What if this guy taps me? What if this guy makes me look like an idiot? What if I'm not good and this guy exposes me? What if I've just been getting, lucky this whole time? I've had almost 100 matches at black belt. I still think like that. It's natural.
But why? A lot of students would say, listen, you are a black belt. You've been a black belt for a while now. And like you've been on the mat for a very long time. You shouldn't be doubting yourself. You know what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm not a psychologist. I couldn't tell you why, but it just seems to me like that's the case. There's some individuals who have, misplaced confidence where they should have self-doubt and they don't. And there's individuals who are super capable and full of self-doubt And it's, again, I'm not a psychologist, but it seems to me like super capable people tend to feel self-doubt more than incapable people. Incapable people are unaware of what they can't do. They're unaware of what they don't know. And they get like a false sense of confidence. So the less you know, the more you have confidence in the field. The more competent you become in that field, ironically, the less confidence you have in yourself. Like you understand how much there is to know and how wrong you could be.
Yeah, I think oftentimes it's, when you start realizing how much you don't know, right? When you see how big things, the expanse is, that's when you, even though you're maybe in the room, the top level guy, you realize that there's a lot out there that I don't know. And what do these people know? And how are they doing it differently? And I could see it creeping in that way. What do you say to those people who feel the way you do about it? How do you get out of your own head, I guess?
Well, when I'm training, I don't give a shit. Right. So that's one thing, is like, if you get tapped in training, whoop-de-fucking do. Right. And you have to expect that person who tapped you might not have the maturity you have. He's going to go brag to his friends. I tapped Kieran. That's okay. I have these titles. You don't. Right. When I'm training in the gym, I'm trying new stuff, right? I'm trying to become better all the time. And when you try new things, if I have less experience in that area than the person who I'm grappling with, even though I have more overall experience, I can get tapped. And I'll tell you right now, I get tapped daily. I get submitted daily. I'm trying new things. I'm letting people advance to work out. It's completely fine. But when it comes to competition, just remember that, sorry, I'm having a brain fart again, you guys. But yeah, at practice, you got to just have fun, right? And focus on improving rather than beating your training partners.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, Thomas?
So how do you do that? Self-doubt's creeping in, then say, we know it doesn't creep in at practice, but it does creep in at competition time. How do you stop it at competition time? Or do you?
Right. Yeah. So that's how I stop it at competition, at practice. Mm-hmm. Put your ego aside, accept that there's a place to get tapped, and that place is it's acceptable to be tapped in training, so long as you're competitive, so long as you are focused on improvement. When it comes to that self-doubt, when you're competing, for me, it just became a matter of meditation, right? Remembering that this is something I do every day, that I'm an expert, right? That I could lose, but if I do, anyone whose opinion changes of me because I lost a jiu-jitsu match, I don't need that person in my life. And anyone that I truly love and truly loves me, no matter what happens, they're not going to think I'm a better person because I won a jiu-jitsu match. And they're also not going to think I'm a worse person because I lost. There's these elements of your life that are going to be constant because you're more than just a jiu-jitsu athlete. Even if you're obsessed like me, you're more than that. You're a human being with people who love you and people that you love and a lifestyle you love. And that's all going to be there for you, whether or not you win or lose. And that's the approach that I take.
And I think also, if we think about practice versus a competition points, is practice, the goal is to get better. At the competition, the goal is to win. These are two very different objectives. As a result of that, the tapping is not, or non-tapping, or not getting caught is really not the objective during training. Matter of fact, some would argue that how will you know all the routes of escape or prevention if you never experience the ultimate loss, right? Like, it's so fundamental in my mind. Like, how in the world are you going to know how to swim if you never get in the water? Like, it's impossible, right? So, like, in order for us to protect ourselves, even on a very basic level, we need to experience those feelings, those pressures, those emotions in order for us to know what to expect, right? Like, this is probably one of the things that you, as an instructor, it's very visible to most of the instructors. Like, you have a brand new student, somebody gets on top of them, and they tap immediately. There's the panic sets in, and like that anxiety and overreaction takes place in the moment. Now, the moment they kind of, hanging out for 6 months, 8 months, a year, whatever, more experience, like somebody gets on top of them, okay, or we just mechanically going through these motions, we experiencing this thing, but we're removing the risks and we escaping ourselves. Have you experienced similar?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'll say, if I see people tapping to pressure, I'm pretty laid back, and I've had coaches that aren't laid back. When it depends on the context of your room, right? So when I am in Maryland at Team Lloyd Irvin, that's a room. At some practices, it's only 4 or 5 people, right? Tiny little practices, but it's Malachi Edmond, it's Jamil Hill, it's Muhammad Ali, And if you get caught tapping the pressure in there, you're gonna get kicked off the mat for that practice. Right? In that context, when I'm running my practices, obviously I have casuals, I have competitive guys coming in. But that's important. I can't stand to see that.
But that's really important, but very important for students to experience that. And this is not in a vicious way, but ultimately you coming into that room to learn how to protect yourself, how to do jiu-jitsu, whether it's competitive jiu-jitsu or hobbyist, it doesn't matter. Like if somebody is in side control with 100 kilos on top of you and putting the pressure against your chest, should you panic or should you figure out how to escape from it? Like
maybe a bit of both.
Well,
no, it's natural.
But which one? Yeah, which one takes the lead, though? Right? Which one is the one that wins out? Because they're playing a battle inside your head, right?
Yeah,
and you like we talked about,
be able to get yourself, to the point where you're thinking your way out, because it's natural. It is natural to want to freak out.
Yeah,
and tap.
Absolutely. So listen, is that self-doubt more of a motivator to you, or is that pressure pulls you back and it slows you down and you have to fight it?
Oh, it's definitely detrimental, but I don't look at it as such. I look at it as an organic fact of life. Like there's certain things that you can be mad about all you want that are not going to change. And like one of those things is, self-doubt or being nervous. There's never a time where you're not going to be nervous. If you care about what you're doing, you're going to be nervous. And that's just a fact of life, and you need to manage that. If you know what I mean.
So essentially you were talking about there are some things we can control and others we can't.
Yeah, there's you can't control whether it happens or not, but you can control what you do because of that stimulus, right? Like for instance, nervousness, which plays into self-doubt. I can't remember where I learned this strategy, but it was from my meditation stuff. I've gotten from all over the place. I can't remember where I got this strategy, but if you are feeling nervous, think about the physical sensation in your body, and then think about a time where you were uncontrollably excited about something, and think about the stimulus in your body, the physical feeling. And if you think about it hard enough, you'll see that the physical stimulus, the thought process is different, but the physical stimulus is identical in times when you're excited and times when you're nervous. And that makes it really easy to mentally reframe nervousness as excitement. And that's a strategy that I use. Again, I wish I could tell you where I read this, but I can't quite remember.
Yeah, but that's interesting, right? So like essentially what you're saying is if we find ourselves points of anxiety and stress and we were just very nervous about something, let's redirect those thoughts into something that gets us excited, right? So it again, it kind of boils down. We talked about this often. It kind of boils down to the decisions that we make, right? These are choices in your mind?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, like the reaction is the same because you care about what's about to happen. If you're excited for whatever reason, something excites you, something great happens in your life, you get to go, something was successful, you make a bunch of money, that makes you excited because you care. Nervousness is the same as excitement, but you have that mental block of worrying about what other people think, worrying about losing.
Fear.
So it's the same sensation framed differently in your mind. Yeah. And the choice becomes which frame you're going to look at that stimulus from.
Yeah. And I think we've talked to people who have said what you said a little bit ago, who calm themselves down in those nervous situations by saying anybody who really cares about me is going to be fine no matter what happens. I know that when I leave here, I'm the same person. they're going to think of me the same way. You know, as long as I performed and did what I was supposed to do leading up to this, you know,
Yes.
and if the outcome isn't what they want and they think negatively of me, well, then I don't need them in my life. And they can have, you can have that debate in your head pretty quick
and
in a
just,
matter of seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like, for some context, who taught me this lesson is one of the most intense people on the world. It was Lloyd Irvin, right? You see him online, you see what his demeanor's like, what his personality's like. He's a very intense individual. And the last thing you expect to hear from someone that intense and pushing you so hard in practice is like, hey man, all these expectations, you think I'm expecting something of you? You think your family's expecting something of you? These are expectations in your own head that you're putting on yourself. It's like, it's all good. It's all good. You do your best. I'm going to be proud of you. And when someone that intense and that hell-bent on winning says that to you, it really puts it into reality, into perspective. You go, oh, okay. It's at face value, it's not okay to lose. But when you take a step back, as long as you did everything possible to win and you still lost, you're still a champion, even if you lost.
Do you think that was the best advice you got from him?
That was some of the best advice I ever received in my entire life. It was at the DC Open in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sits deep then, huh?
Yeah.
Is that something that you embrace and pass it on to your students?
Yeah, exactly. Same as I said, just everyone who loves you still going to love you. It's going to be okay. It's just a jiu-jitsu match. Mm-hmm. Even though consciously, that's the most important thing in the world to me. I want to be a world champion. Mm-hmm. It's hard to articulate.
Well, it's hard because it's almost like a contradicting statements, right? Like it is, at least in my mind, it's like, one, we want to achieve this goal, but by hyper focusing on this goal, we are actually stopping ourselves. So what we are talking about the entire time is stepping back and stop worrying about this pressure of achieving the goal. Just do what you can. Do the best you can. Know that you've done everything you can. And then result is just a consequence of all the hard work. So if you did work hard, there should be no question about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I'm glad you used the word hyper-focus because, I'm someone who struggled academically. I come from like a pretty academic family. Both my parents are engineers. My mother's a PhD in business. And I always did very poorly in school. And I have ADHD, and one of the strategies I used was hyperfocus.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other topic, but what you hyperfocus on is important. Don't hyperfocus on the result. Hyperfocus on the actions that yield the result.
There you go.
Yeah. I wish more people thought it that way. I really do. I think the world would be a different place, and I think especially on the mat, the students would have a very different results, looking at it, not necessarily hunting that gold medal, not hunting the tap on daily basis. It's, our progression of jiu-jitsu would be very, very, very different. Very different. We've been at this for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
Oh, man.
I'm serious. I thought it was like 20 minutes. I looked up at the clock. It's an hour.
It's been over.
Listen, what we do at the end of every episode is we had a pioneer of jiu-jitsu on a previous episode, and Gary will share who it was in a moment. But he asked a question, not knowing that you will be next guest. So Gary is going to take a lead on this. He's going to share that question with you, and then we are hoping for kind of a good end of this conversation with the question. Gary, who was it?
It was somebody you may have heard of. His name.
Hey, let me hear the question first.
Okay. All right. What is the definition of the essence of jiu-jitsu to you? And
definition.
Yeah. What is the essence of jiu-jitsu to you?
I'm sorry to bore everybody, but control leading to submission is the essence of jiu-jitsu, and that should be your goal. Fuck advantages. Control leading to submission.
There we go.
All right.
There we go.
His answer.
Oh, he gave us an answer too.
Yeah, he gave us an answer. His was energy. You spend less while your opponent spends more. That's his
Beautiful.
energy.
Yeah.
And that was from Carlos Machado.
Carlos Machado.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
That's deep. But that's the best
Economy
part.
of motion.
Yes.
That's
Well,
part of
yeah.
control.
Yep,
That's
it is.
That's
It is.
So before, hold on. So now you triggered a bunch of questions in my mind. Is how do you define a control? Because that's another phenomenal conversation on a phenomenal topic in jiu-jitsu is what does truly control mean to you?
Limitations on motion, on movement, right? So when you allow somebody to move without limitation, the possibilities are endless up to the constraint in which your body can move, right? By taking away elements of movement, you're limiting the options of movement that your opponent has. And by limiting them, they become very, very easy to anticipate and to counter. So the controls you put in place really limit how your opponent can react. And by you training yourself on the reactions that are still available to your opponent, the contentions, the counters that are available to them, you can almost know what they're going to do before they do.
This is like
as long as you spent.
This is like talking about black belts know 5 steps ahead anything that I'm doing.
Yes.
Like that's like the often analogy with students on the mat. Like no matter what I do, he already knows I'm going to do it. But that is not that we can read minds. It is the simple fact that we are you're talking about presenting a path that you have no other choices. You're just kind of going where I want you to go and you making those selections by yourself because there's no other options, right?
Yep. And especially Nogi, there's going to be certain things that are out of your control. And as long as you understand that your opponent can do A, B, C, and you have a follow-up for A, B, C, it just then becomes timing and cueing, right? For instance, if I'm in close guard, that's a huge control to have on your body, right? I've essentially separated your upper and lower body by elevating my hips over yours from bottom position. From there, I know that like what you want to do. You want to push into me and stand up. And to counter this, I know I want to expose your elbow to my center line. And if you don't want to get armbarred, I know you're going to take your head across and you're going to try to shift your shoulder and bring your elbow back across. But since I know your head's coming across, I hit a pendulum, right? A pendulum sweep. And that's the general idea, but constantly and from every position.
And that's probably one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu takes so long to really comprehend. There are so many options on every single available positions and position and so on.
Yeah, it's not just techniques, it's the context in which they fit in.
I like that. Actually, I do like that. I like that. So
I'm sorry, can I just say one thing?
Yeah,
before we wrap up?
please.
The idea of technical context I explore in my BJJ Fanatics instructional. It should be dropping in the first week of December. It's called Inside Guard Secrets, Reverse De La Hiva, and the False Reap. It's about 2 hours of straightforward content. I hope everybody enjoys it and pick it up if you're interested in learning my game and learning a little bit more about how to look at jiu-jitsu from a competitive standpoint.
I was about to ask you, where can we find you and your instructionals? So we'll make sure to include all of the links in the show notes as we always do. But where can people connect with you directly? Are you available on social media, websites, any of the fun stuff? If anybody wants to kind of reach back to you and connect with you?
I'm really easy to reach on Instagram. I'm at Lock and Strangle, one word, or just search my name, Kieran Kichuk, Kieran Kichuk. If you shoot me a DM, it might take me a day or two, but for the most part, I get back to everybody.
Well, and there you go. There you have it.
I want to know if I'm going to listen back and see if you pronounced your name at the beginning the same way you just did now.
There's that. Listen, thanks for being here. I mean, this has been over an hour and it flew by. Like we always say this, when the time flies by, we know it was a good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a good chat. Like
we're not sitting 20 minutes in going, oh, Jesus, how do we get out of this?
Yeah. I hope I didn't rant too much. You guys got me all fired up at some point.
Listen,
once or twice.
this was phenomenal. This was phenomenal. But listen, as we are wrapping this up, once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all the wisdom. Thank you for sharing all the knowledge and stories, and you're a true inspiration to many out there. And we'll be sitting back on the sidelines and watching you as you continue driving towards the success and continue achieving your goals. Gary?
We always do a takeaway, what we took away from this conversation, and I've got a bunch of things to choose from. So it's going to be easy, and I appreciate it. So thank you so much. And I want to have you back. So keep an eye out for us, because we'll be reaching back out to you.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you so much for having me. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Derek.
There it is. There it is.
Purple
Beautiful.
Belt.
Yep. Now I gotta change the name. Now I gotta
change the name.
It's gonna be
Gary Purple Belt.
Derek.
Give him a follow, everybody.
Derek Purple Belt.
Derek
Purple Belt. I'm gonna do that as soon as we're done here, and I'll tag you in that.
So many people will be scratching their heads. I love it. All right, let's wrap this up for today. Again, thanks for being here. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Peace.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.